Hello. We're going to be thinking about responding to others' writing. Some writing is not meant to be read by others, and that's good. Sometimes we want to write just for ourselves. Sometimes we want to write and not even reread what we have written for ourselves, and that's fine too. But within this class, a lot of the writing we do is going to be intended to be read by others. And that's a good thing because, especially with academic writing, if you don't share your ideas with others, other people can't respond to them, think about them, advance knowledge further. So we really want other people to read and respond to our writing. I am excited to read as much of your writing as possible. I probably won't be able to read all of your writing because there are many of you and there's only one of me. And even the people working with me in this class, even if we all together tried to read it, we probably can't. So a lot of the experience of responding to others' writing is going to be you responding to one another. I want to pause for a second because I want to make sure I emphasize that even if I had a class that was that comprised of 12 students, I wouldn't be the only person responding to the student writing. I don't think that's effective, and I think it makes it very school-based, right? Like you write an assignment just so a teacher can look at it, and that's not what I want writing to be about. That's not what I think is most productive about writing. So even in a very small class, students respond to one another's writing, and I also give feedback too. And so throughout this course, I'm going to be modeling different strategies for feedback so we can do it in the most productive way possible. Some people are very comfortable sharing their writing with others, and some people get really nervous. And so we want to be able to embrace all kinds of writers and have everybody working together. And I'll also say at the outset that this is a workshop. We're a writing workshop, a writing seminar. We are all working on improving our writing. I am working on improving my writing too, so I am interested to hear what you have to say in feedback to me. And as I mentioned in the introduction video that advertised the class, I'm going to be writing projects also along with you under a pseudonym. So I'll share with you what people are saying to me about my writing as we go. There are many different occasions for responding to writing. The one that I like to think about the most is for interaction, right? If you write something, someone else reads it, and then they say something to you about it that lets you know that they have understood it, that they're thinking about it, that you inspired them to think in a certain way. Sometimes this interaction happens in writing, right? We read other people's ideas and then we might write something of our own in response. It might not be like a direct response to the author, but academic writing is about interacting around writing. Other times we respond in order to summarize another's ideas. Let's think about what this writer said and make sure we understand it, think about his or her terms, and try to work through it in that way. Other times we respond to people towards revision. A writer will provide a draft of a text, and somebody will give feedback helping that writer think about how that piece can be stronger or what other ideas he or she might consider. And finally, the least pleasant version of response is this one, evaluation. I'll put a frowny face there because I don't really like that. I really can't stand evaluating other people's writing. This is probably the version that many of us are most familiar with, especially in school, because we are used to writing something in order for it to be determined to be really good or really not good or somewhat good, and then we get a grade attached to it, or we get accepted or rejected from an application that we're trying to do. So this kind is really not the most pleasant kind. So we're going to be mostly focusing in this course, happily, on the first three. The evaluation is an important part of the process. Writing is evaluated, and in order to accomplish things, sometimes we have to subject ourselves to the evaluation process. But I'm much more interested in this part. Throughout our workshop and our course, we're going to think about our approaches to response with these two key terms, positive and constructive. Okay, positive means that I want us to notice what is working in someone else's writing. if you can only remember one thing in this course, think about that reading other people's writing will help you be a stronger writer. I will keep repeating that throughout. So it's really true. So notice what works in order for you to help that writer think about what he or she can continue to do in that project or in others, and then also what you might want to admire and model in your own writing. And then constructive. Have it be productive, help writers move forward. In the I Am a Writer segment, I mentioned that I worked really hard on annotating this letter, and the teacher wrote bravo with an exclamation point and an A, and that felt good, but it wasn't really constructive. I didn't know what was working in the piece, and I didn't know what else I could do to improve it. And I have heard some students say, well, just mark up my writing with a red pen and be as tough as possible and tear it apart and tell me everything I need to do. And that if that's you, that's okay. That's good. That's not me. I don't respond well to that. And for my own writing, I kind of would get either defensive or I think I get hurt feelings. But anyways, I do think you can still offer constructive feedback to a writer. And even sometimes saying that something is not working. In fact, this morning I got an email from an editor that said that the conclusion of a piece that I'm writing should be stronger, and so the editor offered a couple suggestions, and then finally said, I just think you should rethink the ending to make it stronger, and that's constructive, right? I need to rethink the ending. That's good. In responding to your classmates, I'd like you to think about being generous and kind. Respond in the way that you would want others to respond to you. And if you're one of those kind of tough love people who wants really rigorous scrutiny on your work, I think you can still be rigorous and yet also be generous and kind. Try to be helpful. What does this writer need to know in order to move forward on that project, and then also with his or her writing over the course of his or her lifetime? One of the most helpful ways that you can respond to other writers is just to summarize what they say. Reflect back to a writer what you heard or read in his or her piece by saying, you argue or you suggest. Sometimes writers don't know that they were arguing something, or they want to know if the reader read something totally differently than they had meant to say it. Please also be deliberate in your feedback. As we're talking about the writing process, we think about revising, drafting, and revising. I'd like you to draft and revise your feedback to one another. Spend time thinking about how you're going to respond to writers. Remember, responding to other people's writing will help you be a stronger writer. So spend time really actually making sure that what you are saying to another person is deliberate and that you've revised it and thought about it carefully. And then there are two different ways that you might inflect your response. When you're writing something that's positive, I like to attribute it to you, right? You did this well. Your introduction is great. You raise a really important question at this point, okay? Because that feels good, right? Like, you did this. A writer wants to hear that. However, when you're saying something more constructive, such as the conclusion might need to be rethought, you might want to say the paper, right? Attribute it to the paper or the project rather than the writer, because then if a writer is inclined to feel sensitive about his or her writing, at least it's kind of distancing. It's not you, right? It's the project. So revise the conclusion of the project, not your ending is not as good as it should be, right? The conclusion might need to be strengthened. You might want to rethink the conclusion, allowing the person the kind of agency to rethink the conclusion. And finally, one of the most powerful ways of responding to people is just to ask questions. Ask more questions about what you want to know about or why they arrived at a certain thought. Just ask questions, which really shows that you're engaging with a person's writing. Specifically for right now, our first exercise in response is going to be you responding to one another's introductions to themselves as writers, the I Am a Writer piece. For this piece, we're not revising it, so you don't need to say, think about adding this next time, right? But you can ask a lot of questions and you can be very positive. So I have some structured ideas for you. I don't often offer templates for writing because I actually want to encourage you to be very experimental with your writing. But for this first response, I do want to offer you some suggestions. You could certainly go off list if you want, but if you're looking for templates, here are a few things that you can say to one another as you're responding to the I am a writer. First of all, again, be interactive and positive. If someone is sharing who they are as a writer, you don't want to say, this is all you have, or what kind of writing is that, or, we really want to be positive about each other. So you might say things like, I really liked, whatever it is you really liked, or I have had such a similar experience with writing, and then share something that resonates with you in that person's text. Or I've had such a different experience with writing, and share what that is. That's interacting. And you could also write that you admired a way that writer approached a certain part of the essay or a certain part of the project, or approached a writing experience in his or her life. And then finally, the questions, right? Say, ask the writer, I'd like to know more about this, or what about this, or what other experiences did you have? All of us are going to be able to see the feedback that we get, and so we can also respond to our respondents too. So please do respond to one another. I'd like you to respond to at least 3 other people's projects. And if you notice that someone hasn't gotten any responses yet, please choose that person, because we all want to know that people have read our writing. And so I'm excited to go and read and respond as well. I'm going to be going and looking for at least 3 that I will respond to.